1. This happened about 4 years ago, and I still remember it with such clarity that it feels as though it just happened. At the time, I had recently moved out of my parents' house to be on my own, and moved into my first apartment. I also have a medium-sized dog named Connor, a German Shepherd Boxer Beagle Pug thing that is rather demanding for attention. I had woken up in my small one-bedroom apartment and walked in darkness over to the connecting living room kitchen where my dog's cage was. He was sitting regally in his cage, looking expectant at me. Before I let him out, I find my shoes and grab his leash, which makes him bounce and pace in his kennel. I smiled at his ridiculous behavior as I let him out. He immediately bolted to the door and sat, pawing at the hardwood floor in anticipation. I took up his lead and take him out the door, into the dark hallway where he gets freaked out for some strange reason, and out the front door that leads into the complex. Connor does his business, kicks some grass on it, and runs off to go harass some birds that have taken up residence in the bush near the side of the complex. Due to him being on a lead, I am pulled along to play referee. Finally, I pull him away, and we go back into my apartment. While Connor eats, I get into my uniform for work, make my coffee, and block off the bedroom with a gate. There were only 2 doors to my apartment, the one that actually gets you inside my apartment, and the bathroom. This isn't relevant, but just to picture how small the apartment is. I corral Connor into his kennel, leave the apartment, and wince as he makes the most horrible sounds when I make it outside. He sounds like he's dying or being tortured. As an aside, he does calm down after a few minutes when he realizes it didn't work to make me come back. He's a pretty manipulative little shit. Anyway, I get into my car and take my normal route to work. It isn't long, maybe about 15 to 20 minutes. And that it was also 5 a.m. meant there was little to no traffic. I arrived with a few extra minutes and called the bakery to let me in. I didn't have a key and the manager gets there at 4 a.m. every morning, so I just call. She lets me in and I start my day by checking the inventory of my products. On a scrap piece of paper, I write down that I need to make a batch of coffee cakes and a batch of sweet loaf bread, also noting what kind we had in the freezer and on the shelves, so that I didn't make the same kind. I pick out the recipes I want to use and start gathering the ingredients. I bake them, cold them, wrap them, and label them as I normally do. After putting them in the freezer for later use, I began cleaning and mopping my area. As I go back out to the floor nearest to my car, I wake up. Frazzled and slightly dazed, I look at my clock. 4:30. My alarm had only a few minutes before it would go off, so I got up and sat on my bed for a moment, thinking about the dream, shaking it off as I was working too much. I went about my normal morning routine. Connor freaked out about the hallway like always, and went potty in the yard, flipped some grass on it. He then went and harassed what seemed to be the same bird in the same bush as in my dream. I shrugged it off. I don't know shit about birds. As far as I know, they all look the same. I fed Connor, made my coffee, got into my uniform, and put Connor into his kennel. He made the same dying torture sounds as normal, and I made my way to work. I arrived with a few extra minutes, just like I did in my dream, but I thought nothing of it as there was hardly any traffic. I walk in and check my inventory, a scrap piece of paper in my hand. With a slight sense of being creeped out, I notice I have to make a batch of coffee cakes and a batch of sweet loaf breads. There were exactly the same number of coffee cakes and sweet loaf breads in the freezer right now as there were in my dream. 2. This happened around 2:30 a.m., 8/1/16, a few hours ago. I'm a 26-year-old male living in Plano, Texas. It's a very safe city. but I listen to a lot of scary stories on YouTube, so I carry a pocket knife with me. When I do this, I feel I have a little more protection. Back to the story. I got back from the gym and wanted to play Pokemon Go. Everything was going great, until I get near my old elementary school. A car drove past me. I was thinking, meh, I've done this so many times with nothing happening to me. Then the car stops. So I'm walking, and I'm under a streetlight. I just thought, did their GPS crash? Then the car was coming back my way again. I go into a light jog just in case. By the time I get to the playground, the car is right next to me and aggressively taking 3 or 4 parking spots. I'm thinking nope, and run into a dark part of the baseball field. It's pitch black out there, although I remembered that my iPhone is still on, so I turned it off so that they wouldn't be able to see me. I did it, and I stopped to see where the car was. It was going back down the same road as if nothing had ever happened. 3. Quick note. This is from a 21-year-old female's perspective. And I'm not an award-winning writer, so bear with me. So this is an odd one. Not exactly scary, but a good warning to be careful on what you put on Facebook. And keep in mind, there are people watching very closely. I was relaxing at home one afternoon, knitting and listening to scary stories while waiting on my boyfriend to get home from work. I get a text message from an unsaved number. Hey babe. I'm immediately annoyed by this. Who the fuck is this? I don't give out my number to just anyone. If you're not close to me, I prefer to ignore you in the comfort of my own home. Your boyfriend? Duh. Who else is calling you babe? My phone finally bit the dust, so I had to get a new plan and everything in order to get a new one. No, my boyfriend's phone was acting up at the time. He dropped it and the screen was cracked, so I never questioned it. Baby, send me a selfie of you so I can show my coworker my girlfriend. Thought this was pretty odd since I'm pretty sure he doesn't just show me off like that. But I sent him an old selfie. You're so beautiful, yada yada yada. I thought this was weird. Either he took a Xanax or he was just in a weird mood. We're both assholes to each other, and that's how we express our feelings. I bought it and started up a conversation, starting with, I'm so hurt from last night. And that was a big mistake. Of course, he asked why, and I went on explaining how I got hurt. At the time, I was working at a strip club, and I would stay there for 10 hours dancing, and basically banging myself against a metal pole, and being covered in horrible bruises the next day. This was not something I shared with a lot of people, unless I was really close with them. He went on with the conversation and asked me how work was, if I made much, etc. He started getting a bit dirty, and I honestly wasn't in the mood to get out of my comfortable position and take pictures for him when he can just wait. He got pushier, and at this point I was getting fairly annoyed, and just sent him an old one from the depths of my phone just to shut him up. He kept asking for more, and I was not having it. I worked all night, and I already voiced how tired I was and how I was just trying to finish up my knitting project. Now my boyfriend is fairly laid back, and is never pushy with me. He knows how tired I got after my long nights on the weekends. This is when I finally fucking asked, is this really Josh? I guess he got over trying to persuade me for nudes and answered, no, this is his coworker Chris. Josh had me text you to test your loyalty, and you're a cheating bitch. By this time I was fairly confused and upset. My guy is 3 years older than me, and besides him being goofy, he's very mature over matters such as this. Tell Josh, I don't think I want to talk to him anymore. I was fairly pissed off at the least, and immediately texted my boyfriend and cussed him out and told him how upset I was by how immature he was being. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything to you. I've been at work unloading trucks all day. The fuck is wrong with you? I started explaining what was going on. It sounded really bad, like I was trying to cover up something, and I sounded really stupid. He demanded the number and texted it. Hey buddy, do we have a problem? This is Josh. He got an odd response back, something about me being unfaithful and how he needs morals. I don't know what the fuck this kid was on. My guy and I were both left scratching our heads, not knowing what was going on and who this was. Ding ding ding, another fucking text message. From none other than this asshole. I got a picture of your face. Screenshot of our conversation. Which he sent to my guy to make him think I was cheating. And a nude. I can send this to your family via Facebook, or I can post it all and show everyone what a whore you are. Okay, 1. Revenge porn is a felony. And 2. He mentioned Facebook a lot, so I copy and pasted his number into the Facebook search bar. His name was Justin. And I wish him ill because he is a well-known pervert who does a lot of screwed up shit. I told my boyfriend who it is, and he sent a quick message. Hello, friend. Justin had immediately blocked him. Now I do not know this person. I have never spoken to this person. He is not a friend on my Facebook. I honestly have no idea how he got my number, unless he went to my business page for my hairdressing service. But that doesn't have my boyfriend's name on it, and my personal Facebook page is private, and to my knowledge, doesn't show my number. And you have to have my number to even find my personal Facebook page. My boyfriend came home, and I let him read the texts. I told my brother about it as well, and he gained access to his number and Facebook. So did my retired Hells Angel buddy from the club I worked at. Eventually, they got his address. By the end of this, he had a mob of people at his house. Be careful who you fuck with, for 1, and for 2. Apparently, there are people who have this much time on their hands to do screwed up shit like this and really dig for your information. And 3. Don't be gullible like me. However, I didn't know this was a thing people did. So Justin, you made that week for me fairly stressful with the blackmail, and you got what you deserved. But let's not meet again. 4. Well, to start this off, I can only say that I am a gay, 5'2", 14-year-old that is considered to be fairly attractive and more mature looking for my age. I had a room on the 2nd-story house, which is easy to climb up to. And it's hot on most nights, so I left my window open most of the time. Well, this is just about a year ago, and it still haunts me to this day. For 1, I was stupid enough to sleep with guys older than me, like, a lot older. I used to sneak out at night, and got caught twice before this incident. This caused my parents to install an alarm that is motion activated. And it had the motion detector and the part that made the noise, which was kept in my parents' room. But the detector was placed right outside of the back door. Well, I thought I'd be safe because I lived right by a police station. I also lived in the suburbs of a really quiet town, and on that is fairly safe. I met this guy, and for his sake I'm gonna call him Jared. Well, we met, and we also made plans to meet up and get personal. He seems too friendly and protective, and he brings me to his hotel. When I enter, I'm greeted by a man that I didn't know. That got a big red flag, but I brushed it off. We go into the 2nd room the hotel offers, separated by a door. I'm slightly less creeped out, but Jared comes in the room and closes the door. He offers me some weed, to which I decline. which was a good move on my part. But then he offers meth. I decline again. He goes on about how he has a beautiful house and is a wealthy drug dealer. That was the biggest red flag. We talk more and, well, you know. I'm not proud of it one bit, but I do have to say that I was a reckless 14-year-old. Well, I'm not the most stupid kid. I ask him to drop me off at a neighboring school that is about a 10-minute walk from my house. After watching him drive away, I'm pretty relieved that I can go home. I didn't notice anything unusual about this walk home. I crossed the same street with ease. I thought it was all behind me until I got a text just about a month later saying, "I really miss you. I will rent the hotel out again just for you." Well, I told him I had a boyfriend and that I wouldn't do anything. I got more texts saying that I owed him for smoking his weed. I never did, and I blocked him. Oddly enough, my underwear began to go missing one at a time. I thought I was just losing them, but one night I was scared to death. I woke up with the feeling of dread and decided to just brush it off and go downstairs to get a drink of water. The way my house is situated is that there's a set of 3 windows just above the front door, and you can typically see the road to the small dead-end neighborhood. But at night, if someone drove by, you would see the light through the whole living room, which was just below the walkway. It was a new moon, and I live in a community where no one is awake past 8, so, to say the least, it was really dark. As I was walking on the walkway, I saw the typical light from a car, but this time it slowed down just a little before turning off. I creeped to the window to see the same car that Jared picked me up in before. I lost my shit. I was panicking, but I didn't want to wake up my parents, as I didn't want them to know I slept with people so much older than me. I kept on watching, and to my horror, I saw the driver's door open and shut, and a person shrouded in the darkness starts to half run, half walk, and jump my fence into the backyard. I heard a clutter, a crash, finally the same generic bell the receiver to the alarm made. I was in shock. It all clicked. He was sneaking through my window, which I never locked. I hurried to my room and hid. I hid for so long that I actually fell asleep. I wake up to see my mom cleaning in the kitchen like nothing happened. I asked her what the whole commotion was last night, and she said that 2 of the spinning chairs my father built were knocked onto the concrete floor. To this day, I know this was one of his times to take my underwear, and it went wrong. I am still scared knowing that I could have been taken away and no one would have known until morning, or I could have been killed because I owed Jared. I was terrified of every night in my room ever since. But now I lock my window every night, and I have my pit bull sleep in my room every night. But nevertheless, I was scared by this, and I never planned to tell my parents. I've only told my older sisters and my closest friends. But to those kids who think they can be safe just because they live in a good neighborhood, please take the extra step to be extra safe. 5. My sister Callie and I decided to have a sleepover for our friends. It was a fairly common occurrence, since most of our friends lived the same street we did, with our house being on the cul-de-sac. It was a ranch-style house with a basement and a garage, and when we moved in, it was the perfect size. I was about 8 years old when we moved in, and Callie was 6. We had a game where one of us would run downstairs and stand below the laundry chute, and the other would stand in the hallway upstairs where the chute was, and we'd whisper things to each other and try to guess what was being said. Or sometimes, we'd throw things down and try to get the other to catch it. Mom hated it because we would sometimes get things stuck in there. At the time of the sleepover, we were a bit older. I can't remember precisely, but let's say I was 12 and Callie was 10. My best friend Mona lived right next door, and Fran lived down the street. with Faye living right next to her. We'd all grown up together on that street, and while all the girls at the sleepover were my age, they were just as close with Callie as they were with me. Mona's older sister Candace, Candy for short, was invited too, but she was too grown up and mature for little girls' sleepovers. Or so she said. Candy was odd. She never quite fit in when we would all get together, and preferred to be rude and eccentric, driving everyone away. My mom would always persuade me to try and include her, but it rarely had any effect. One time, Candy took a sheet of stickers and stuck them on my already angry cat. It was a nightmare to get her to hold still and remove them, and no one involved left unscathed. The night of the sleepover, everyone came over after dinner time, and we all headed for the basement. It was our little safe haven. Half of the basement was used for the laundry and utility area, and my dad had a man cave type place on that side as well. The other half of the basement was left largely untouched. A spare bed and couch was all that adorned it. The floors were made of green painted concrete, and the walls on the sides were grey, popcorn concrete. The fourth wall was fake wood paneling, and it separated our half from the other utility area. Everyone brought sleeping bags, blankets, pillows, and snacks, and my mom usually made chocolate milk or let us have soft drinks. Even though we were supposed to try and get to sleep by a certain time, it almost never happened. There was no one to stop us staying up half the night, giggling and telling stories. Even though Callie was younger than I was at the time, she acted much more mature, never shying away from a creepy story or a dangerous truth or dare mission. She always wanted to prove herself to everyone else and not be treated as the younger sister. Our side of the basement had two half-sized windows that weren't well insulated, so a lot of sound and even wind came through. There were stains on the walls beneath the windows that colored the grey concrete odd browns and yellows, mostly from rainwater and dirt. At night, we would turn off the lights and only use flashlights when we needed to get up and walk around. During that particular night, there was a full moon, so lots of bright white light was shining in through the windows and illuminating the green floor fairly well. Callie and I had our sleeping bags set up on the old bed, and the rest were on the couch and floor. Things had been silent for a while, and we'd all started drifting off to sleep until we heard a sound. Like someone was clinking something together and tapping on the wooden panel wall. Callie bolted upright and turned on her flashlight, aiming it at the darkest corner of the room, behind where the light from the window shone in. Tara? Callie shook me awake, her hand shaking the flashlight around, shining it in the faces of our sleepy friends. Yeah, I heard it too, I replied, taking the flashlight from her and patting her thigh. Don't worry. You know these windows are creaky and terrible. I tried to soothe her, and it seemed to work a bit. Would it make you feel better if I went over there? I asked, silently hoping she wouldn't want me to. I was scared, but needed to be brave, so everyone else remained calm. For all of Callie's gusto, she was always the one quick to frighten. At first, Callie shook her head from side to side with great force. No, Tara, don't leave me here, she begged. Her giant eyes pleaded with me, looking as if they might explode with tears at any moment. I obliged her and gave her a quick hug around the shoulders, and we both laid down again, snuggling up in our sleeping bags to feel secure. About 10 minutes later, we heard the noise again. This time, it went on for a full 30 seconds or so before anyone heard it besides myself. Faye sat up and looked at me. What is making that noise, Tara? She asked, rubbing her eyes. I don't know, should I go look? I asked in general of the group. Callie sat up and looked at me with her pleading eyes once more. Just go look, I guess, but hurry. The words caught in her throat and she sounded terrified, gripping my arm until I forcefully pulled her away. She sat there silently, holding her stuffed bunny for dear life. I walked a few feet, and then my foot caught on something and I fell forward, only barely catching myself before my face splattered on the concrete floor. "Watch out, Tara!" Mona shouted, rubbing her foot. Sorry. I wasn't sure why I was the one apologizing, but that's how I am." Mona lay back down with a harumph, as if she hadn't a care in the world besides getting to sleep. I continued my journey to the far side of the basement, flashlight in hand, trying to keep it steady. Once I reached the wall, I looked down at the floor with the flashlight and saw several pieces of chalk laying there. It wasn't odd to see things like that, though we mostly used the chalk outside. I was about to turn around to tell the group what I found, but something caught my eye. At one of the windows a shadow moved slightly. I glanced up and let out a startled scream, as I saw half of someone's face there, illuminated by the moonlight. I fell backwards and scuttled toward the group like a maniac, all before realizing it was Candy's face. She'd been spying on us. I breathed a huge sigh of relief and went over to comfort Callie, who was in tears by this point, and saw Candy dart off towards her house again. It's fine. The noise was just Candy, probably trying to scare us. Mona, your sister is really weird sometimes," I chastised, unsure how to handle the situation. Mona sighed and shrugged her shoulders. "I know, she's nuts. Can we go to sleep now?" "Callie, do you want to go upstairs or stay down here?" I questioned my little sister, smiling at her in the darkness, since I'd broken the flashlight when I fell earlier. She shook her head from side to side and let out a sigh, laying back down in her sleeping bag. She was so stubborn. Faye and the rest of the group lay down as well, once again trying to get back to sleep. It felt like it could have been 3 a.m., but more than likely it was much earlier, possibly midnight or so, and the moon was as high and bright as it was going to be that evening. Later on, I woke myself up by coughing. The room smelled like dust, and there were crumbles of popcorn-textured concrete on the bed. I sat up and took a drink of water and tried to calm down. But my throat was on fire. What had I swallowed? No one else was awake, even though I'd been coughing pretty violently, so I decided to just try to go back to sleep. It took a while, but eventually I did fall asleep again and woke up the next morning, having forgotten most of the night's events. I sat up, leaning against a wall behind me, rubbing my eyes and taking another sip of water. The morning sun starting to come through the windows, and my mom came down the steps as quietly as she could. I smiled at her, and she returned the gesture for a moment. However, a stern look quickly washed over her face, and she put her hands on her hips. "Tara," she chastised. I winced, hating to hear that tone and know I'd done something wrong. "What is that?" she asked accusingly, pointing at the wall above me. I was confused and sleepy, but I scooted forward in the bed and turned around, looking to where she'd pointed. There, carved into the concrete, was what looked like scratch marks from something with 3 claws, right above where I was sleeping. I fumbled for words and looked at my mom. "Mom, I swear, I didn't do it. We didn't do anything last night." I tried to convince her of my innocence, but it only made her angrier. "Don't you fib, Tara. How did you do that? Why did you do it?" she asked again, certain of my guilt. I began to get upset at the fact that she was accusing me, and also at the idea of someone or something having torn huge chunks out of the wall directly over me as I slept. At this point, everyone else had woken up and saw what my mother and I were looking at. They all looked at each other, confused, feeling the tension in the room. They all got up and went upstairs, and I didn't blame them. My mom was a force to be reckoned with when she was angry. "You damaged the house, Tara, why?" she continued, not really giving me a chance to say anything. I sat there in shock, not really sure what to say or do. She eventually relented and went back upstairs, mumbling something about breakfast being ready on her way up the steps. I stepped out of the bed and looked around at the empty basement and at the windows, suddenly remembering what had happened the night before. I began to walk over to the chalk, feeling very apprehensive. Approaching the wood paneling, I stopped short. In yellow chalk, someone had drawn hundreds of eyes, all different shapes and sizes, in the small section of the wall. Next to it in red chalk was the words, "Always watching," in handwriting that was neither mine nor Callie's, and I was terrified. I didn't know if Candy had done it, or one of the girls overnight, but it certainly hadn't been there yesterday before we'd all gone to sleep. The chalk was laying at the baseboards, just little nubs remaining. It must have taken some hours to do this. How could we have not seen or heard it? A chill ran up my spine, and I bolted upstairs, forsaking breakfast, and burst out the front door. In my bare feet and pajamas, I marched over to Mona's house and rang the doorbell. A groggy woman answered, and I asked if Candy was home. She raised an eyebrow at me. "No, Tara, Candy was gone all night at another friend's house. Do you want me to call her?" The mother asked, and I shook my head. "Are you sure she was gone? I saw her at the window last night and—" Mona's mom cut me off. "Tara, that's impossible. I drove her to her friend's house last night myself. It's across town. There's no way she could have been there." I took a step back and mumbled a thank you and returned to my house. I cleaned up the chalk after breakfast and never told anyone about it. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I even asked Candy about it the next time I saw her, and she denied everything, sounding very sincere. I never spent the night in that basement again, and just had the sleepovers in my bedroom from then on. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to my latest subscriber stories video. I just want to say thank you all so much for how nice you were with your congratulations on the 100th episode. I really do appreciate everything you said. The video itself was quite a bit of work, and my poor little throat was all sore after it. But I think it was worth it in the end. I was very glad I saved that Pam story for that video and didn't use it before. It was a good way to end that video. I'm sorry if I sound a bit tired today because well, I got woken up by a helpful neighbour. That was me lying in bed. I'd actually set the alarm to wake up early, but that's neither here nor there. I got woke up by the sound of this kind of buzzing sound. And I thought, oh, one of the neighbours is obviously working in their garden. And then it started to sound a little bit closer to me. Oh, hang on, what's that? So I opened the blinds and looked down and I see one of my neighbours in my garden with his edge trimmers. So I kind of rushed downstairs, threw on some clothes and popped my head out. I'm like, what are you doing? Then I kind of realised, and I'm glad I didn't shout at the guy, because he actually really was just being helpful. And it turns out what he's doing is because I've got hedges at the back of my garden. This is nothing to do with scary stories, that's just why this is the reason I sound tired. Because I was woke up early, got hedges at the back of my garden, which his property, his house is on the other side. So he usually does his side and then he gets the top for me as well, because they're actually quite tall and it's not easy for me to do it. And he was just been extra helpful this time, and he decided to come round and do the other side of them, which saved me a job, because it meant I could do other things that day. And that's why I sound tired. Okay, so I'm going to head off now, because although I probably should go to bed, I think I'm actually going to do a little bit of work on the Wednesday video. Right now I'm looking at a story. I've had this one for about a month, so some of you may have heard it. It's called Illuminating Light by 136-Coco. Okay, so that'll be the first story in the video. So I'm going to head off now and do that. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.